Right, welcome back. I hope you all had a really good session in your diocesan group. So we don't have a great deal of time, and we do have a kind of hard stop, as it were, in order to make sure that we get to our closing liturgy and that you get to lunch. So we've got a short period of time whereby I'm going to be hearing, we've been through the WhatsApp, we've been hearing the different suggestions and the different ideas that have come up, that have been shared, and you can see them on a rolling thing kind of behind that. What I now want to do, though, is I'm very conscious that this section was called Questions to the Speakers. So what I'm going to just get a feel for is we're going to allow a few minutes to recognise that we need to, this is not really a question and answer time, but I'm very conscious that there might be a few people that do have questions. So if you do have a question, I would like you to stand up now, please. If you have a question that you would like to pose and to be heard.
Chris, we said that we weren't taking microphone round, so from a COVID point of view.
We're just going to have to leave that for a second, Jeff, thanks. Just bear, you have to trust me. Is that okay? Okay, thanks. So maybe if that lady, you can come up and you can ask your question, and then we're going to move on to the feedback. Thank you. If you speak from here.
Sorry about that, everyone. It just felt that because of COVID, we weren't going to let the enemy win. And if somebody did have a question or want to have their voice heard, and I know it's partly because I was a teacher for 25 years, and I do love the sound of my own voice. But I would like to ask, really, where we're at as Roman Catholics and Christians and maybe other denominations and other religions, atheists, agnostics, whatever we are, do we really feel it's okay to eat meat? When it says in the Bible, thou shalt not kill, or that, it says that quite clearly. And I feel it's about time that we stopped eating meat. There's so many good things, corn, TVP, it's really delicious, it tastes just like meat, and it's just as good. And I feel we should all become vegetarian, vegan, as Roman Catholics and Christians and any other denomination, as I said. Why not talk about it on a World Climate Caring Conference? Also, another thing is about dignity for women in the Catholic Church, because I think I've been discriminated against. I have a call into ordination, and no one's listened to me, and I've been thrown out of, well, I was thrown out of Anglican Church, actually, for talking about it. Not a Catholic one, because I don't talk about it in Catholic Church very much. But I thought it's really important that we talk about it, and I've asked that we can have a National Justice and Peace Network conference as soon as possible to discuss dignity for women. Like, I've got one supporter, 2 to 3. Thank you very much. So, and I think we should be discussing it at this conference because, in fact, dignity for women has a lot to do with Mother Earth. If we're going to become one with Mother Earth, as we should be, then we should be considering her as our mother, and maybe it's part of God. God is immanent and everything. God is in the earth and us all. I was an RE teacher, I know, you can take it from me. So let's actually talk about it. It's a bit late now. But in this conference, we need to be looking at equality for women, because how can we really understand what the Good Samaritan is all about, and the new humanity and all that, if we don't recognise that woman lying in the ditch, partly naked, with no respect, with a calling to ordination. And I went through 23 years of severe mental health problems because of my calling. And I attempted suicide 5 times. And there's saints, lots of saints, Saint Teresa, all sorts of saints, that all died at a young age. And I said to God, I never said that, I hope to die at a young age. I said, I hope to survive and help you get women as priests in the church. I didn't realise what a hard struggle it was, and I didn't realise I'd be Roman Catholic because I was brought up an Anglican. So, surprised to laugh at that, it's hilarious. But anyway, nice to see you all, and I've really enjoyed myself this weekend. and I'm sorry, but I have to have my question. There was a question in there somewhere, and it was about why haven't we talked about those two issues this weekend? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for coming up and asking your question. I really appreciate it, and that's really great. So I think to be able to... Oh, is that another question? Okay, you're the last one then, Anne, because we're going to really run out of time if we're not careful. And then I am going to do Chair's prerogative to say that's the last question. And would you be brief?
Thank you very much. I just wanted to ask the speakers and everybody else if you can help us all to make the links between the arms trade and nuclear weapons and conflict and war and all that that does to damage the environment, and that has, you know, horrific implications on the future of the climate. So if we can link those things together, and if the speakers can help us to do that, I'd be grateful.
Thanks very much, Anne. So, it is in true Justice and Peace conference style that we are running up against the end of the process, because these are all really important opportunities to flag lots of issues, and everyone gets very excited, and unfortunately we run out of time before we deal with all of the issues. But I know that you've been very busy in your diocesan groups doing some planning and sharing in terms of what has come out. So behind me on the screen are some of the copies of some of the WhatsApps that's been shared, because I'm very conscious that not everyone that's in the group might have seen them. James has copied them out onto a sheet, and that will be available hopefully to be shared out as part of the follow-up Justice and Peace Conference communication. I think Jeff, I've just signed you up to that. So I just wanted to share a few things that came out of that. Some of the opportunities around, there's lots of existing things like the Silky programme, like the divestment issue, that particularly that Operation Noah's work is doing, the YCCN relay. People are talking about let's know what's already going on, let's support things that are already happening, let's encourage our engagement and solidarity with those things. And specific talk about Creation Sunday activities, talking to priests and bishops about organising a Creation Sunday activity. And it might be a mass, it might be a service, it might be a walk. That was another thing that was mentioned. These sorts of things are an opportunity to reach out to new people as well. But there are also opportunities to bring in other issues, whether it be about lifestyle choices, vegetarianism, the role of women, or the arms trade. These are opportunities to come in and have those conversations. It doesn't always have to come from a platform. It's about your space and in your own churches and your own communities to be able to have those conversations. And who might you have those conversations with? And I think what came across for us was that it's a sense of being open to all. This is an opportunity to be able to reach out within a parish setting, but also perhaps to reach out to other organisations and other communities. The Climate Coalition that you've heard about this weekend as well, being mentioned, has got as members more than 100 different organisations, many of which are very, very local, including the Women's Institute. And so, you can reach out to organisations to discover that you're actually connected. Obviously, there was quite a bit about schools and young people, and particularly doing some meaningful listening to our young people. That was good timing. And things like engaging with diocesan youth teams and that kind of stuff. So the processes are there. So who are the people then? People that will talk about things like, let's talk to our priests, we'll talk to the bishops, we'll talk to the education services in our diocese, picking up some of the points that animate about the reality in schools. Obviously there's a sense of kind of feeding back to bishops. People are also talking about feeding back to their MPs, following on from the conference and the fact that there's the press release that's going to be available soon. And of course, there are other religions, lots of religious congregations, the Columbians, the Salesians, the Benedictines, the secular Franciscan orders were mentioned. There's a whole raft of us from lots of different kind of traditions. It's about connecting with them. There's also things like the churches together and looking at the different ways. So we might actually have to do a little bit of planning around how to reach out, depending on what you want to focus on. And how might we do this? Well, there was quite an interesting kind of sense of, some of the words that came out. Well, we do this, we give thanks to people. We thank people if they've made changes already. We acknowledge what people have been trying to do. We encourage people. We don't shout at them. We're trying to be creative. And people are saying, well, I want to share the CDs that I've heard, that I've been inspired by tonight. And one great word that came out was joy, like the joy of the gospel, the joy of our mission that we're trying to do, to inspire others as hopefully we've been inspired this weekend. And that posed some quite important questions about coordination and communication. If we're communicating with one another, there's a lot going on. How can we be more coordinated? Is there space for NJPN to kind of provide a bit of a platform? Where is the space within a diocese for that kind of coordination to happen? Andy talked before about how we as agencies are trying our best to be coordinated, and obviously there's more to be done there. But things like there's lots of different actions going on. Is there a space at a diocesan level or even at a deanery level to kind of get people together to do some joint planning and coordination? Because there is a lot already going on, so perhaps we might need to find out what's going on. You don't need to reinvent the wheel, because invariably there'll be something going on, and it's about joining in with it, not necessarily organising separately. So perhaps there is something specific for NJPN to be thinking about in terms of its role, and we'll leave that to the executives' feedback after the conference. What we've heard from today is that sense of learning from one another, both in terms of the inspirational insight that we've had, but also kind of the hints, the tips, the plans, the ideas. So so that sense of taking the opportunity from the pandemic to perhaps do things a bit differently when we come back into churches, the opportunity to perhaps reform how our parishes are organised, to genuinely build back better. So for the last 5 minutes, I'm going to invite our 4 speakers back up onto the platform: Lorna, Andy, Mark, and Father Eamon. Just to finish with you guys. Sorry, Gloria. From all that you've heard, including the questions posed and the constant kind of my attempt to summarise some of the incredibly rich opportunities that came out of the groups. Just an opportunity to say, what would be your thoughts or message to the participants of the conference? So I might actually do you in that order, if that's all right. So can we kick off with you, Mark? You need to stand up and use the microphone. Thank you.
Well, I'm going to take this opportunity to just have a few minutes of reflection overall. And it comes from systems thinking, which one of the features of systems thinking is something called emergent properties, which means that the outcome is more than the sum of its parts. And I'm very aware that the subtitle to this conference, I think, is an inspired one: Moment of Truth. And moment comes from the word, shares the root with momentum. So this moment of truth has a momentum of truth. And we've all been involved with that this weekend. And we join a huge tide, actually, of momentum towards establishing the truth, living in the truth, bearing witness to the truth. And come COP26, we need that witness bearing the truth to the people in power like never before, because this is a decisive moment. And it's greater than the sum of its parts, which means that it isn't just a technological challenge, it isn't just an economic challenge, it isn't just a political challenge, it is an evolutionary challenge. That we've reached this point in our evolution as a species in the evolution of life on Earth, we reach this junction, and we are now making the decision for the future of life on Earth. So it is a great cloud of witnesses, a cosmic witness, and it's part of, I think, the story that I told in terms of how one of my inspirational stories about ecological conversion, and that Aldo Leopold felt convicted when he looked into the eyes of this dying wolf. And it was because he was surrounded by a cosmic witness. When he says there was something in those eyes known only between the wolf and the mountain, it is that we are surrounded by a cosmic witness that bears witness to the truth. And we either align with that, and when we do align with that, it changes us, and we act in completely revolutionary ways. It is that metanoia, is that complete turnaround. And when we don't align with that, then we're confused, we're lost, we're weak, we give up, we despair, we fall into just going with the status quo. So this is a momentum of truth, and we've been building that this weekend, and let's leave this weekend following in that great cloud of witness to the truth.
I think one of the characteristics of a Catholic is to be guilty, to be sprayed with guilt. And I feel here this weekend very guilty because I would not come to this weekend of my own bat. I had no particular interest in being here, except I was asked to come, by the Northwestern Diocese, Stephen here in particular. He asked me to say a few words on the opening night, so I felt, okay, I better go. And then I thought, I better stay. And so I wouldn't have come otherwise because I'm not converted. But being here with you since Friday night, I have been really gobsmacked and overwhelmed. I've reconnected with some people I knew years ago, some 30 years ago, and some more recently, someone here who is 90 years of age, brought by his young wife, 85 years of age. And I've known them for many years, and all through their lives they've been so committed. And today isn't today for grandparents and grandmothers and grandfathers, the old generation. And Pope Francis is saying, you're never too old, no one of us is too old to share good news. Well, going from the 90-year-old all the way down, I'm amazed at you people, at your commitment, your energy, your consistency, and your witness. Never underestimate yourself. Never underestimate the seeds that you are sowing and have sown, and the good that you are doing. So that's my first thing. I am sprayed with guilt. I'm at the beginning of a conversion. I've all the feedback today and all the momentum even from the Anglicans. I'm going to go back, make new beginnings. But I do want to say, I noticed there was there's religious here. I saw a Jesuit priest. I saw an Augustinian Assumptionist. I saw about 20 Columban priests. One Puritan. Forgive me if I'm misrepresenting, I didn't see any diocesan priests. Now, most of us are in parishes, most of us are in churches, and in every church there's a priest. Now, unfortunately, we can't be the prisoners of those priests, whether they're for or against. It's just so fantastic to see these young children here who spoke so beautifully yesterday, and the boss says he is the youngest here, and as Bishop John Arnold said, his 7-year-olds. I would dread speaking to a deanery of priests. Give me, a primary school or any year 3, 4, 5, or 6, and we can learn more from them. So I'm faced with apathy. Let's be positive. Passionate apathy from most of the priests. And therefore, what do we do? So go back, go home, be yourself, be all you can be. Let's be full of hope. Let's make a new beginning. We've got September, October, November. And this is the start of something really great. So, thank you.
I agree totally with all that. And my quick add-on is, but don't forget to rest. It's Sunday, on the 7th day, God looked at what He created, thought, this is good, this is very good, and had a rest. And I think as somebody's been campaigning for 30 years or more started out working on human rights issues in South America. You've got to rest now and again, or you burn out. Now, we should all go away from this weekend, I hope, really inspired and motivated to do more. But do remember to rest now and again, because God says we need to, and boy do we. These battles are not going to go away tomorrow, next year, or the next decade. So we've got to sustain ourselves. And I really hope, I don't know who the 90-year-olds are, I really hope, whoever they are, I'm like you in another 30 years' time. But it will only happen if I rest now and again, or I will burn out. And then in that rest, let's use the gift that God has given us, the gift of His works, the gift of nature, to remind us what we're doing this for, but also to get the inspiration and the peace that comes from spending time in nature. If there's one thing that the pandemic has, I think, shown millions of people, is how much we benefit from time in nature. The science is all very clear as to why that is. It does stuff to us neurologically, but the theology, I think, needs to become clearer. These are God's works. Why would we not feel refreshed from just being among God's works? So don't forget to rest, and one option for doing so is to just take yourself out more in nature. And if we can help, I've got a whole load of freebies. It was our last magazine, just happens to be on nature and well-being. If there's an limited number, first come, first served, but if you want some tips on how to do it, come and get me afterwards. Thanks.
I don't know if there's anything more to say. I agree with absolutely everything that's been said. I mean, I feel totally re-energised. Maybe it's because it's the first after the lockdown, but this really feels like a time for new beginnings. It feels like that moment of crisis that we're all really living, and we, as I said yesterday, each of us has our own story of what that crisis, what the 18 months that we've been through really is for us. But going out from this conference, let's make a new beginning. I mean, to me, it looks, looking out at all of you, it feels like a forest that's been growing in the church for many decades. And you all represent, many of you, those oak trees, those beautiful trees that have weathered the storms, weathered the many storms of feeling not accepted or feeling ignored, feeling like put out to the side. It's not our job to do. We're talking about these kind of tree-hugging things. But I think that our moment has really come. It's really come in the church. And it's come for the world. And as that, I can't remember your name, but the lady who stood up so bravely just there and shared her thoughts on this, where we're at, much of which I can really identify with as well, someone who works in a very male kind of environment in the church with the Vatican and whatever. We need to have these conversations, we need to open up, and I could stay here for another week. I don't know about you, because maybe I feel like we're just getting going. I really do, because it took the first day. The lunchtime on the first day, I have to say, I had to go to my room because I was overwhelmed. I was just like, I needed to close myself in. I now feel like I could stay for a week, and I would love to stay and continue the conversations. But let's make this new beginning go out. We don't have time. We don't have time. Time's not on our side. That's the tragedy of the situation. So wouldn't it be wonderful, as Eamon said, if there was something like this, very simply, in every diocese, like a feedback session, or like something that really took the message and the momentum that we feel here out to the whole of the church, and be bold. I think these are times for being bold and being brave, and send that message to your bishop. But even better, go and meet them. Go and meet them in person and explain your ecological conversion, what you heard here, and really respectfully, but knowing that there's also a grace in this moment. God wants us to save this planet, and He sent us Pope Francis. So, just to end, I wanted to read, and many of you probably know that Drew Dillinger is one of my favourite poets on cosmology here, very much influenced by Thomas Derry.
And he has a poem called The Hieroglyphic Stairway, which really kind of gets me every time. So I'm going to end by just sharing a part of this poem, because I think it's for grandparents, and all of us future grandparents, please God. It's 3:23 in the morning, and I'm awake, because my great-great-grandchildren won't let me sleep. My great-great-grandchildren ask me in dreams, what did you do when the planet was plundered? What did you do when the earth was unravelling? Surely you did something when the seasons started failing, as the mammals, reptiles and birds were all dying. Did you fill the streets with protest when democracy was stolen? What did you do once you knew? Thank you.
There is nothing more to say other than thank you. Thank you to our 4 speakers tonight. Thank you to each of you for your hard work and your reflections that are still kind of coming up on the loop around. We're going to move into the closing liturgy, but